shocking video just dropped showing Knicks fans going after Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. People who were there say this went way beyond normal sports rivalry. This was not just loud fans getting rowdy outside the arena. What went down in New York City over the past few days was organized, targeted, and seriously dangerous. And the most disturbing part? The people who were supposed to stop it did nothing. Knicks fans tracked the Spurs team bus. They found Wembanyama's hotel. They camped outside that hotel for days, watching his every move, waiting to confront him. These same fans went after anyone in a Spurs jersey on the streets of Manhattan, attacking people whose only crime was supporting the visiting team.
All right, so there are concerns growing after things got violent in New York City after Monday night's game. Video shows a Spurs fan getting jumped. New York police say they're now searching for a group of people behind this attack. And you can see the Spurs fan walking down the street when a crowd surrounded him, trying to rip off his jersey.
Spurs fans got jumped, screamed at, and surrounded by mobs while the NYPD stood by and watched. By the end of this, you will know exactly how out of control this Knicks fan base has become, what they did to the Spurs and the people around them, and why what happened in New York these past few days goes way beyond basketball. Do not go anywhere. This one is bad. Let us start with what you need to know about Knicks fans before we get into the specific incidents. Knicks fans are not like other fans. This is not just an opinion. It is a documented, consistent fact about one of the most passionate and volatile fan bases in pro sports. Madison Square Garden is the most famous arena in the world, and the people inside it carry that identity differently than fans in other cities. Most NBA fans cheer their team, boo the other side, and go home. In New York, being a Knicks fan is your identity. It is tribal. The Knicks are not just a team, they are a piece of New York's soul. For years, for decades, that identity had nowhere to go. The Knicks were bad. Painfully, embarrassingly bad. The championship drought going back to 1973 became part of the fan base's DNA. That kind of long suffering turns fandom into something harder and more explosive. You do not get the raw, electric energy of a 2024 Knicks crowd without 50+ years of frustration buried underneath it. And now, with the Knicks one win away from a title, all of that built-up pressure exploded in ways that were thrilling and, in these past few days, genuinely frightening. The line between passion and violence can disappear fast. In New York City, it did not just get crossed, it was wiped out completely. Let us talk about the streets first, because before the bus attack and the hotel situation, the first warning signs showed up right after Game 3. The Spurs won at Madison Square Garden. The mood in New York got dark fast. Knicks fans were furious. Wembanyama had dropped 32 points and taken over the game. The championship window suddenly felt smaller. The anger made sense. What they did with that anger did not. Spurs fans who had traveled to New York, bought tickets, booked hotels, showed up to witness history, started reporting incidents almost immediately after the final buzzer. People in Spurs gear were followed out of the arena. Verbal fights turned physical. Jerseys got grabbed and torn. Reports flooded in from across Manhattan of people being surrounded, threatened, and physically attacked just for wearing the wrong team's colors. This was not organized gang activity. It was a fan base that had convinced itself that anyone representing the other team was a fair target. And these were not people looking for trouble. They were regular sports fans just trying to get back to their hotels or the subway after a game. What made it worse was the NYPD's response, or the lack of one. In multiple documented cases, police officers were right there while Spurs fans were being harassed by groups of Knicks supporters, and they did not step in. They watched. Some body camera footage and witness accounts describe officers actually smiling at the confrontations like it was entertainment and not a public safety emergency. The message to the people being targeted was loud and clear. You are on your own tonight. The badge means nothing to you right now because tonight, New York belongs to the Knicks. That is not how law enforcement is supposed to work, and people got hurt because of it. Then came the bus. The Spurs team bus became the most talked about vehicle in New York for all the wrong reasons. What a mob of Knicks fans did when they found it sent security consultants scrambling and league officials rushing to their phones. Here's what happened. A group of fans had apparently been tracking the Spurs movements, which is alarming enough on its own. When they spotted the bus, they moved fast and with coordination. This was not spontaneous. It had been planned. They surrounded it. They beat on the sides. They pressed against the windows. Objects were thrown. People inside described the noise as a wall of sound built to intimidate. These are professional athletes who have heard hostile crowds their entire careers. They know playoff pressure. They know enemy arenas. But this was different. This was a mob surrounding the vehicle you were sitting in, with no barrier between their hands and the glass right next to your face. That is a frightening situation for anyone, and the Spurs players and staff had to sit there while the bus slowly got out. Police response was slow and not enough. By the time any real presence showed up, the mob had already done what it came to do: make the San Antonio Spurs feel unsafe in New York City. But the bus was not even the worst part. The worst part was what happened at Wembanyama's hotel. Victor Wembanyama is 20 years old. He came to New York to play basketball in the finals and go home. Whatever you think about his play on the court, the flagrant fouls, the trash talk, none of that makes what happened off the court okay. Fans did not just find which hotel the Spurs were staying at. They found his specific room. They set up outside in shifts around the clock. They tracked his arrivals and departures. They pressured hotel staff for information. They tried to get into areas guests should not be able to reach. Strip away the jerseys and the championship energy, and what happened at that hotel was stalking, pure and simple, targeted, organized stalking of a 20-year-old. The Spurs had to overhaul their security protocols, assign additional personnel specifically to Wemby, and manage an environment of constant tension, all while trying to prepare for the biggest games of their careers. The NBA has rules for exactly this kind of thing. Teams have security protocols to protect visiting players from this. But what happened in New York went far beyond what those protocols were designed to handle. This was multi-day, coordinated, and pointed directly at one specific person. It demanded a much stronger law enforcement response than it ever got. Now, let us talk about the culture that created this moment, because that context matters if you want to understand what needs to change. New York's relationship with the Knicks is one of the defining sports stories of our time, precisely because of how badly the franchise failed its fans, and how loyally those fans stayed anyway. People packed MSG through decades of losing, embarrassing front office moves, and seasons that ended before they started. They kept coming back because the Knicks are not just a team, they carry the weight of New York's identity. That level of investment is electric when it produces the atmosphere MSG is famous for. It becomes something else entirely when it produces what we have been describing this week. The same passion that makes Knicks fans the most intense in basketball is the same passion that, twisted and pushed to the edge by championship pressure and Game 3 rage, put a mob around the team bus and sent people to stalk a 20-year-old in his hotel for days. Social media made all of it faster and bigger. The bus tracking, the hotel location, the coordinated crowds, none of that happens at that scale without social platforms working as an organizing tool. Posts telling fans where to find the bus, where the hotel was, who to target, spread through Knicks fan groups online with barely any pushback. The platforms that let that content spread need to answer for the role they played in what followed. The NBA's public response has been careful and measured, which in league terms means they're furious but do not want to blow things up before Game 5. League sources confirmed that security has been upgraded significantly for the rest of the series. The Spurs have been in direct contact with NBA security about the specific threats against their players and staff. Conversations are happening at the highest levels about accountability. But the NBA is in a genuinely uncomfortable spot here. On one hand, the Knicks are one win from their first title in over 50 years. That is the most commercially valuable storyline the league could ask for in its biggest market. The passion and intensity of this fan base is part of what has made this finals feel huge. On the other hand, what was done to the Spurs organization, to Wembanyama personally, and to Spurs fans on the streets of Manhattan went too far to be quietly managed. The NBA needs to say directly and clearly that this was unacceptable, not careful, diplomatic language that buries the specific behavior under layers of both sides. A clear, direct statement that a team bus was attacked, that a 20-year-old player was stalked at his hotel for days, that visiting fans were assaulted on city streets while police watched, and that none of it is acceptable no matter how much a championship means to this city. Anything less tells every team in the league that bad enough behavior in an important enough market gets managed and not confronted. The NYPD's failure in all of this is not a footnote, it is one of the main stories. New York deploys major law enforcement resources around big events at MSG. The city knows that high-stakes games create the conditions for exactly what happened. The resources and the authority were there. The failures, officers watching confrontations without stepping in, slow response to the bus, and inadequate protection at the hotel where an NBA player was being stalked, were not about lacking tools, they were about choices. Choices about what deserved the response and what could be let go. Those choices were wrong, legally wrong, ethically wrong, and wrong in ways that led to real people getting hurt while they were in New York legally, peacefully, and with every right to the same protection as anyone else in this city. Championship fever in a city like New York is a powerful force. That is real, but it does not excuse the police department from its basic duty to protect people from violence and intimidation. The NYPD failed that duty repeatedly over multiple days, and those failures will be part of every future conversation about whether New York is a safe place for visiting fans in a high-stakes playoff environment. Now, let us sit with Wembanyama's situation for a moment, because it deserves it. He is 20 years old. He traveled to New York to play basketball. He has been extraordinary in this series, and he is the main reason the Spurs are still in these finals at all. Whatever legitimate criticism exists about his play on the court, none of it justifies what happened to him off of it. Not the mob at the bus, not the days of organized tracking and stalking at his hotel. The mental toll of having to watch your every movement through a city, knowing that groups of people are actively trying to find and confront you, is real. It is not something athletes sign up for. It is not a normal part of competition. And because it happened to Wemby at the NBA Finals in the biggest market in the sport, the league's response carries meaning far beyond this one series. Every young player watching this is learning what it means to be a visiting player in New York. Every team that travels to MSG next season will carry what happened here in the back of their minds. What the NBA does next will determine whether those players feel the league actually has their back when it counts. Here's the full picture. Knicks fans attacked the Spurs team bus. They stalked Victor Wembanyama at his hotel for multiple days. They assaulted Spurs fans on the streets of Manhattan while law enforcement stood and watched. All of it happened because a fan base that had waited 50 years for a championship decided in the heat of that moment that the normal rules of human decency did not apply to them anymore. They were wrong. No championship, no matter how long in coming or how deeply felt, gives anyone the right to terrorize visiting players, stalk athletes in their hotel, attack innocent fans on public streets, and assault a team bus while police look the other way. Passion does not excuse this. History does not excuse this. These are things that happened, that caused real harm to real people, and that demand real consequences from the NBA, the city of New York, and the police department that chose to look away. The basketball in this finals has been incredible. The story of the Knicks chasing their first championship in 50 years is genuinely compelling. But what happened outside that arena these past few days needs to be addressed with the full seriousness it deserves. Because if it is not, if the championship fever is allowed to cover for all of it, then every visiting team in every future high-stakes series in New York will be walking into that same dangerous environment with no reason to believe anyone has their back. What is your take on all of this? Should the NBA consider moving remaining games to a neutral site given the security failures? Does the NYPD owe the Spurs organization and the fans who were attacked a public apology and an explanation? And what does this say about where sports fan culture is heading when championship proximity produces this kind of behavior? Drop everything in the comments right now because this conversation is not going anywhere quietly.